In this tutorial, I am going to show you how to make my rainbow latticino, otherwise known as a glass twistie. My goal was to make a really vibrant twistie that had an opaque rainbow on one side and an exposed layer of silver glass on the other side. That way, when I used this twistie or this latticino in my beads, I could reduce the silver glass before encasing the bead and get lots and lots of great color. So I'll walk you through how I built this latticino, and I'm also going to mention some things I would have done differently once I saw the final result. The first thing I did was use an opaque white base from Double Helix. It's called Oracle, and I flatten it down with my tongs and square it off so I have a nice foundation or base to work with. So you can see all my colored stringers for the rainbow side, and I'm starting with this opaque red. I apply it to the glass and then flatten it down on my marver. Then I go in with the next color, which is opaque orange. Followed by opaque yellow. Reshaping the gather as needed. Here we have a light opaque green. Some turquoise stringer. And because I was out of room, I was not able to squeeze in that last stripe of cobalt, so I decided to use that elsewhere. So here I am flattening out the shape, squaring it off to make sure everything is tidy, and melting in those opaque stripes so it becomes solid on that one side of the gather. Here I'm adding a layer of transparent straw yellow, and this is to help that reaction with the silver glass I will apply on top of it. Now I did notice there was a little gap there at the end next to my turquoise stringer, so I just added an extra line there to close that gap. Now I am encasing the opaque striped side with a few layers of clear glass. And what I do is I swipe on the hot glass all side by side in a row, and then I come back and I build a second layer that's slightly narrower than the first layer, and I keep doing that until I build up into a dome shape. My goal is to ultimately make this gather more round, or more like a cylinder. I'll come in now and then and reshape with my marver just to make sure that I'm achieving that dome shape I'm looking for. I do smooth as I go and make sure that the layers are all nice and even before I go in and add the next layer. This just keeps everything nice and smooth, and it also reduces the risk of trapping air bubbles. I'm just checking the shape to see if I should add any more clear glass. Every now and then I'll go back in and just square off the shape again to make sure everything stays nice and neat and all my layers and colors stay separated as they should. Now here I'm adding a stripe of that cobalt on the outer edge of my gather. And this is a nice way to marry the seam between the front layer and the back layer so that it looks nice in the final pull. I apply a little extra heat, just tapping down on that stringer to make sure that it's well adhered and squared off. I'll give a little attention to the bottom just to make sure that that stringer is well attached to the metal mandrel. Now I'm going in with my silver glass, and I've chosen Clio for this particular latticino, and I'm swiping on layers of this Clio on top of that straw yellow layer I had laid down earlier. And again, I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the clear. I'm going for that dome shape to round out this gather. Smooth out those layers, watching for any air bubbles. And just encourage the glass to take on that nice domed shape. Apply a little bit of heat at the base of the gather and scrape down the glass to be sure it's well adhered to the mandrel. Now I'm going back in with another layer of glass to build up that dome. Typically that works out to be about 4 swipes on that first layer, about 3.5 swipes on the second layer. I might do that a couple of times just to build up a little height, and then I go down to 2 swipes in the center and then 1 swipe, and just smooth it all out. I'm not planning on encasing the silver glass with clear here. As I'm building this latticino, I plan to leave it exposed so I can get those reactions when I use it inside an encased bead. As a final touch, I apply a few stripes of encased intense black stringer. Intense black pulls really thin and still keeps its nice opaque black color. And the reason I encase it first, not only so that it melts into the gather nicely, but so that that black line does not look flat in the final latticino. It still looks slightly round. So typically I'll apply 1 stripe on one side of the gather, right down the center, and on the other side I'll apply 2 stripes on either side of center, which gives a really nice unique look in the final pull and twist. Now here I am just adding a little bit of clear glass to the top to marry together and seal up all those ends, and also to give myself a base to attach my second mandrel so I can pull the gather and twist. Superheat the end of your gather, attach your second mandrel, and make sure it's well adhered to that glass. And now I soak the gather in the flame to make sure it gets molten all the way to the center. And this won't take long because it is not a huge gather. I made sure to keep the size nice and small. Once the glass softens and relaxes, it'll start to thin out, and that's when you know it's time to twist. You don't want it to be too soupy hot, otherwise you're going to lose your shape in the twist and it will get much too thin. And the way I do this, I twist both hands at the same time in opposite directions while I pull my hands apart. Now if you see you're twisting your latticino getting too thin, Just stop, let the glass solidify a little bit, and then slowly start again. Now you'll see me flashing the ends of each mandrel into the flame to keep the thickest part of the ends of my gather nice and warm and soft so I can pull as much as possible. Now we're not done yet. I like to use every bit of glass I can, so as soon as I burn off my ends, I'll quickly grab my mandrels with a little bit of that glass on both ends and then reattach the ends of the glass to each other. Here you can see I'm smoothing it out on my mandrel, applying heat to each end where the glass attaches to the metal mandrel, and slowly starting to pull, just feeling my way when the glass is soft and pulling my hands apart very gently. So I just go slow here, trying to get as much glass off of my mandrels as possible and leave as little on the mandrel as I can. Twisties are really forgiving because all the colors still look good even though they may not be perfect like the center of that cane would be. But look at all this glass that I'm still getting off the ends of my mandrels. To me, it is worth the effort. Now that's about all I can get off the ends of the mandrels, so I'll break it off. And this is the final result. This particular latticino is a little wonky. It's not so even all the way down, but it is absolutely usable and still looks great inside my beads. Now at the beginning of this video, I did mention a couple of things that I would have done differently. First, instead of making that oracle white a square in the beginning, what I would have done is make it more of a wide rectangle so that I could have fit that cobalt blue stripe alongside those other colors I was applying vertically. In addition to that, instead of just one layer of the opaque rainbow color stripes, I would apply a second layer. I was looking for a little bit more of a vibrant rainbow color in the final result, and it ended up being more of a soft rainbow look. So a couple things I would try is to apply 2 layers of each of those stringer colors, and then on top of that, I might even go a step further and apply the transparent equivalent of each of those colors on top of the opaque stringer stripes. I think by doing that, I would get a lot more of a vivid rainbow look in the final twist, and those colors would really pop. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial. I hope it was helpful to you, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out in the comments below.